On the menu, it says there will be no. The more notes that there is on the menu, the less accommodating the staff is going to be.
Hi. Welcome to the Modern Waiter Podcast. I'm Marlon Joseph, the Modern Waiter, where we discuss all things restaurant business. Learn something, laugh at something. On today's episode, the chef effect. Today we will discuss the effect a chef has on the restaurant. Front of the house and back of the house alike bear the tone of the chef. Here to join us today is Dave Kenney, but first, the intro.
Tired of working deadbeat jobs for lame pay. I'm tired of getting fired and hired the same day. If you know the rules of the game, then you'll stay. And if you don't, then you'll be...
As usual, I'm joined by my good friend Danny DeVilla.
What's up, people?
Before we start the show, I'd like to welcome everyone watching us here on YouTube. We're still relatively new. I know we have a lot of content up, but as far as YouTube is, it's not that much. And we really want to thank everyone who do join us on our audio podcast. Welcome, welcome. Whatever platform you're on, it really helps us out. If you like our show, consider subscribing. It really helps us out, and it helps the algorithm reach out to more people in the restaurant or out of the restaurant. However you want to look at it, it really helps us to grow. It puts wings beneath our wings. So let's begin. Let's welcome Dave Kenney to the show.
First time, long time. I love the show.
That's awesome. I mean, every show I like to give a little background of how we come on the topic at hand. And Dave and I talk a lot on whether he's messaging me or he'll comment on the show. And he is definitely a first time, long time.
Oh, yeah.
Tell everybody about your restaurant experience.
Oh man, I started as a dishwasher when I was like 16 at a short order restaurant called Grumpy Joe's. Over 200 tons of chicken wings sold. And you know, in the restaurant industry, there's so much turnover that I quickly advanced from dishwasher to prep cook to line cook, and then pretty soon I was like running the place, and I was like, 17 years old, managing the kitchen. Yeah, so that's how I started off, and then I went from there and got like a more traditional culinary education at a country club out in Ohio. We baked cakes, we made bread, we did weddings, huge functions, catering service type stuff. I managed a restaurant for a pro basketball player for a while. Then I moved down to Florida, and I went to work at a restaurant. It was like 2 a.m. It's hot. I'm sweating. It was like, what's his name? Emeril Lagasse's nephew's place. And, it was great, except for I was getting paid terrible, and I was working till 2 a.m. And my uncle looked at me, and he's like, "You don't want to do that." He's like, "You want to work on the beach?" House? Yeah, he said, okay. That was back of the house. And he said, "You don't want to do that. You want to go work on the beach, look at beautiful women, and make a couple $100 a night." And I was like, "Yes, please." And he got me the interview at you were my trainer, my very first trainer for my very first experience in the front of the house. Which I still think about today. I mean, you crushed it.
Oh, that's awesome. You never know. I don't get any comment cards on how I do training people. Yeah. But at one time, I trained everyone that came through those doors, and it definitely burns you out if the management isn't cautious about retaining people and giving them all the tools they need to. And when you came on, it was very much, a strong staff. True. So if anybody came in, they were there for a while, and as were you. Yeah. And so let's get into the chef side. Tell me a little bit about your experience, chefs, because we're gonna center the show around. We're gonna explore how chefs set the tone for the entire restaurant. Really, I mean, people, in the know that he affects or she affects the entire restaurant. It's really their show.
Yeah. I guess like to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it's the culture is set by the chef, and the culture of chefs is it's mean. It's mean. It's a mean culture. I learned from a mean chef. My very first chef at Grumpy Joe's was a mean guy.
Was his name Joe?
Was he?
No,
was he
well, no, Joe was grumpy, and yeah. He would come in the kitchen. He would come in the kitchen sometimes, and he'd have a phone book in his hand, and he'd rip the phone book in half. No joke. So Joe was grumpy. He was grumpy, but no, his name was Randy, and Randy was an evil SOB. And he'd scream and yell at you. He was fueled by drugs and alcohol. I mean, like, he was a vicious dude. And then the next chef, vicious dude. So like the culture, just from beginning to end, is just like, you know, they glorify it. You know, even on television, the mean spirited, you know, nature of chefs is glorified. And I think it's a problem. It's a thankless job. So, you know, long hours, hot, stressful, you know, so like you're bound to get angry, but it really does like permeate throughout the restaurant to the staff, and inevitably, you know, it's affecting the customer's experience. So through the course of my career, I learned to change, because I used to be a mean chef in my younger years.
You know, you kind of turn into your parents.
Yeah, for sure.
So take me back to your first job. You're working for this mean chef Randy, and is there one particular thing that you could share with us that really stood out, that jarred you? Hey, welcome to the show type of thing, where you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I could deal with this.
Well, because he was mean, I was perpetually nervous. You know, like you get a little performance anxiety when somebody's barking at you all the time. You know, they're just like harping on you constantly. And we were super busy one night, and I grabbed with my tongs a stuffed sole. It was like in a casserole dish out of the oven, and I dropped it on the floor, and the hot butter went into his shoe and scalded his leg, like, and the dude, I thought he was going to kill me. You know, like,
oh, man.
He threw the thing across the room, smashed it on the wall, you know, but like, this is standard operating procedure for Randy. You know, things are breaking, but, you know, like, the anxiety continued building, you know?
Yeah, spilling hot butter on the angry guy is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Painting the picture, when I first started, I worked for a mean chef, and that really set the tone for, oh my gosh, I completely understand what you mean when you say that you get this nervous energy when you're around the person like that, because you're just in survival mode, right? You really you don't want to stand out in any way. Good or bad, you just want to be not seen, at least how it was for me.
Yeah, you're walking on eggshells.
Oh, big time. I remember having to go back in the kitchen for a refire when a guest says, hey, I wanted this medium rare, and this is, you know, medium. He has sent me back out with the same steak to tell the guests that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And A, that's not my job, and B, it's
not fun.
It's not fun. I feel like back then, you know, 20 whatever years ago, 25, 26 years ago, I think you can get away, or maybe you couldn't get away with it, but you didn't care because there wasn't, you know, reviews like there are now. Do you think that any of that has really tempered any because of
social media?
Media?
Yeah, probably. And I think it's become like trendy to be a chef. So it's like a more desired position. It's a more coveted role in society. So maybe it attracts different characters. So like back when I first started, I think the culture was kind of like a swashbuckling pirate culture almost, And I think it's kind of evolved into like more of like a hipster culture, like a cool, hip, kind of a revered job versus like a slave labor job.
Okay, so let's break that down because I think the trend in chefs that you're describing could be a trend in society. You mentioned the hipster culture. Also, it's understanding and parsing out where the gold is, right? Like you might be mining, but you want to drill down to what makes a restaurant successful, and it's the food.
Right.
So then you give the chefs now a piece of the ownership, but they are just below the owner, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole experience hinges on the success of the chef, which is why it's important for them to be good leaders.
That's a really good point. And I think when we're going to talk about, well-balanced chefs after this, but when we're talking about mean chefs, it's a type of leadership if you really get down to it.
Yeah.
Drill sergeants.
Drill sergeants, yeah, which may or may not work. I mean, you have to be firm no matter what. You really have to run a tight ship because you're responsible for numbers, you're responsible for inventory that has a time limit on it. You have to hit sales and things like that. But we're going to say that's all a given. What we're really talking about, thank you, Danny, is that leadership style that may or may not work. Mm-hmm. Because as a server, I started out in as a cook, but I was, it wasn't like a restaurant that had a head chef and all that stuff. All the recipes came down from corporate, and it was just line cook status all the way across the board. So I feel like some of the best chefs were the toughest chefs. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that they had to be an asshole.
Right.
And working for an asshole, it almost empowers the rest of the staff to be assholes. And I think that's where it kind of goes south as far as leadership. Would you agree that, you've been on both sides of the table, when you run into a server that is maybe a little bit rude or stern with the guests, it's almost like empowered by the house.
Right. Like the no substitutions effect.
Okay, there you go. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So like on the menu, it says there will be the more notes that there is on the menu, the less accommodating the staff is going to be. You know what I mean? Like the more notes that aren't involved in the menu, like no substitutions, there'll be a 3% gratuity on top of the regular gratuity. The more notes you have, the less accommodating the staff is, because they're encouraged by the management to draw a line in the sand, basically, between you and the guest.
True. Now, I remember the chef that you remember, John. He was balanced, I thought. Like he was just a strong chef, one of the best chefs I ever had, honestly. And the whole substitution thing wasn't about being mean. He just wanted to protect his product.
Sure, and that's what it's all about, and making sure it's consistent for the guest.
Consistency is what it is.
Making sure
exactly.
His creative juice is recognized by the customer and the end user. He was a great chef. I like John.
Yeah, he really was super talented, and the flaw with that I can say from the outside is that some chefs have a blend of arrogance and insecurity, and that melts into something that could be a little bit temperamental, so to speak.
I think drugs and alcohol have a big effect on it, because like you could have a great chef, nice chef, but he gets a couple in him a little too early, things could derail real quick.
Well, how else are you going to cope?
Yeah, exactly. And that has to do with personality, like it goes like this, the
True.
creativity, the whole thing.
I remember going to a restaurant with a couple of buddies, and we ordered, and then we also wanted something to go. And the server looked at me and said, "Oh, we don't do any to goes. I'll have to bring you a box because we can't do it in the kitchen." And immediately I sympathized with him because I'm like, his chef's an asshole.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
reason why you can't prepare a dish and put it in a box.
Right.
You know, especially when you're paying full price. You know, it's like you're not asking for any favors, so you have to bring it out and then come bring me a box.
Right. I had a similar experience like a week ago. I went to this restaurant, and it has the no substitutions and the gratuity. They were hedging their bets on one of the dishes that said the turkey will braise and become tender while it steeps on the table. And I was like, why don't you bring me the tender turkey so I could eat the soup instead of letting it sit there? And then I asked for cheese on my eggs, and the waitress comes out and she's like, "I'm sorry, there's no way to melt the cheese on the eggs unless you scramble the eggs." And I'm thinking, now you're lying to me because you're just an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, it just creates this terrible line between the client and the server, and it just makes it bad. I'll never go back there. Never. Can't figure out how to melt cheese. Come on.
That's unfortunate because you are going to, yes, by all means, protect your product. But people aren't stupid. You know that you can melt cheese. Either you're not using cheese.
Yeah.
Or you're an idiot, or
you're an asshole. Yeah.
You're an asshole. Yeah, and most likely it's one of the last two.
Right.
We talked about no substitutions. We talked about, well, I'd like to talk about some things that guests can do to push the line that evoke that, that hard line. What do guests need to understand that chefs have to go through?
Oh man, that I think compliments go a long way with a chef. Like, anytime you can return to the kitchen with a compliment for the staff in there goes a super long way, because it's like I said, a thankless job. You're there late at night, you're there early in the morning. The orders don't show up, the staff doesn't show up. All you hear is complaints because you have no interaction with the client. You don't get to see their smiling faces. You don't get to have fun with them while they're having a good time. So you're just back there. It's hot. Almost everything goes wrong every day. Like, there's no such thing as a good day. So when you bring those positive notes back to the staff, it really brightens their day. I mean, for lack of a better term. Make them feel good about what they're doing. And I think when I worked in the kitchen, I did it because I loved it. And I did it because I love people, and I wanted those people to have a good experience. I might get there, but I just did everything the best I could because I wanted people to enjoy it. But most of the time you never hear that feedback. So when you get that feedback, it makes an impact for sure.
What do you think is the best way to deliver that feedback? Because I go out of my way to pass along the compliments.
Yeah.
I suspect that not every server does, because it goes in one ear and out the other. Hey, tell the chef this was great or whatever, because I don't hear other servers doing that.
Yeah.
What's the best way to get that message to the kitchen?
I think exactly what you said. You just walk back there and just verbalize exactly what the client said to you, and just share that little share the love.
A nugget. Man. Yeah.
Okay. It's I look back, and when I got the job that I have now, the restaurant that I have now, not that my last chef, I still carried the memories of Mean Chef and chefs. Now I have a chef that's very well balanced. The kitchen, there's no swearing. You have to really have respect is a big thing in there, because things get heated, and he makes sure that if you're gonna talk like that, you gotta take it out of the kitchen, and he also minds the volume. Do you think that there's that's a trend moving towards being more balanced, or you still see the culture as prevalent as the
I think it's definitely moving that way. I think, like I said, I think it was more of a culture back then, and I think it's definitely changing. People are more mindful, I think, in general, of respecting other people in the workplace. So I think they just kind of are forced to follow suit, even if they don't want to. I definitely appreciate your chef making an effort to shift the culture and make it a pleasant place to work and make it an efficient place to work. And it's cool to hear that.
Do you think it's also an age thing? Because you see a lot of the management style of older people as, you're lucky to work here, do it just because I say so. And younger people need to understand why. Why do I need to do this? And so I find that a lot of managers who are used to that old style, they find it more difficult to adjust, and they have that back in my day mentality. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. I mean, I would hate to make a blanket statement and say all old people are assholes, or that they old dog can't learn a new trick, But that's what it is. It's like maybe admitting your way isn't perfect, and that you're willing to learn something new, and being a little bit vulnerable and honest with yourself and your staff, and learning what makes them tick, learning what their strengths and weaknesses are, incorporating some of their creativity, things like that.
Danny, what's what memories do you have of Mean Chef?
Well, I didn't work with the Mean Chef that you had originally.
Okay.
So I came in right at the same era as he was, pretty much, but I was there a little bit longer than a little before he was. But we had a lot of chefs after we had the chef that we had. So I remember the transition of going through different chefs too. You know what I mean? From the good chef who was kind of well balanced, but everybody has their flaws in life.
For sure.
But everybody has their days too. They'll be saying. I mean, I never had any issues with him, but people. You could probably ask somebody who worked in that same staff, and they'd be like, "He was an asshole. What are you guys talking about?" To that person. But for us, he was exactly what he should have been. You know what I mean?
You know what? They should have been buttering him up with compliments.
Yeah, so it just depends on who you're dealing with and the personalities that's dealing with, and you're going to get a different reaction from different people.
Yes, and the personality that I find hard to deal with is the one that you don't know where you stand.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you know where you stand, it makes it a lot easier. Dave, what advice would you give to any server to really, like you mentioned, butter them up? How can you just stay out of harm's way of a temperamental chef?
You have to work, run the food, understand the preferred line of communication. If he doesn't want to be talked to while he's working, don't talk to
him.
Give him
that space. Exactly.
Yeah. Always run food. Always be there when hands are needed. If they need something in the kitchen, you be the first one to run and get it. Just be a team player. And that chefs think servers are lazy. They have animosity towards them because they go home making more money than they do. They work shorter hours. They're out there in the air conditioning.
They get to look at the girls.
Yeah. Yep, they're hanging out with all the beautiful women, and they look down on servers. So if you can make yourself an integral part of the team, at least when you're back there, you'll get whatever you need whenever you need it.
I picked up on communication, and one thing that I remember doing on purpose is understanding, like you said, when to be able to talk to them, and somebody's always going to fuck up.
Oh yeah,
and my whole point was not to be that guy and not do what that guy did.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So I remember this kid came into the kitchen and asked the chef the absolute dumbest question, and he went off. And I said to him, I pulled him aside. I go, "Why would you ask the chef that? You passed 10 people."
Who could answer that question for you?
Who could answer that question, and it wouldn't have mattered. Your job wouldn't have mattered. Now you're on the radar for being a moron. You know, like, why would you ask the chef? That shows that you don't even know what the menu is.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the last thing that the chef wants to know, that he's putting you out there and you don't know what the menu is all about.
Yeah, understand the menu, understand your responsibilities, lend a helping hand, you know, like that's it. And then, you know, talking to the chef, you have 40 tickets or however many tickets, they're on the floor. You're back there managing all your staff, barking orders at everybody, and somebody stops you to ask you a stupid question. You completely lose your train of thought, and then you have to, you know, manage to find your way back into where you just were, you know, executing service. And it can be a killer, you know, and that's one time you definitely don't want to talk to the chef.
That's 100%. I agree with that. Also, I'll piggyback onto that. It reminds me of when I used to be in the kitchen a lot, like particularly with my grandmother or whoever's cooking. I feel like the time to talk to the chef, whether it's a well-balanced chef or a mean chef, is when they're not busy, when they're doing prep, or, you know, they're more relaxed. That's the time that you form, I don't want to say you form a bond, but you establish yourself as a person who they can remember asking meaningful questions.
Right.
And so I would ask more meaningful questions about the items, because it shows that, hey, you really want to know. When you're doing a menu, or you read a menu, or even take a test, ingredients do matter, but how those ingredients
coincide together.
Yes, that matters. And it's not always clear that, you know, that this is braised first, or this is sauteed and then blended, or, you know, blended and then sauteed. All those little order of operations, they matter. And if you're there,
and that's the stuff you're not supposed to know. That is what you do ask your chef about. You're asking about certain ingredients and certain things that
food,
you know that you don't know that the average customer wouldn't know either. So if you don't know and the customer doesn't, somebody needs to have that middle ground, and that's what the chef's there for.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you were in Colorado. Tell me about what you did with the Caveman.
We started with a food truck and grew that into like a catering company and a meal delivery service. And we did, you know, gluten-free, grain-free, sugar-free, soy-free, dairy-free meals for people with IBS, cancer, autoimmune disorders, you name it. And we shipped those meals nationwide, and I took what I learned in the front of the house and applied it to our mission in the back of the house. And our mission was to always say yes. Okay. And we treated all of our clients really kind of kid gloved every single one of our clients. They all had really special needs. And I was happy to fulfill those needs and help those people. At some point, you know, again, there is like a breaking point, but for the most part, we really tried to cater to their needs, no matter what they were, how big they were. And that was a big challenge, but not one that was too big for us to handle. And the other challenge is just running daily operations of a business, you know, that the order showing up late, the staff not showing up, making changes on the fly, mistakes that happen in the kitchen, you know, things like that. And then shipping is like a whole nother topic. But those are some of the biggest challenges.
Now, the ability to always say yes is that really feasible in a restaurant? Because I know you like to say you're doing catering. So is it easier to do it when you're catering compared to in the restaurant?
It's easier when you have a week's notice. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely. But like when I worked at Trulux, we said yes to everything. You know, if somebody ordered a baked potato, we would run next door to Capitol Grill and grab a baked potato. You know, like everything was always yes. And they were able to accomplish it within the confines of what was available, you know, to them. So it's possible within reason.
Now, okay, so I have a problem with the blanket statement, always say yes. I feel like that's it's a nice thing to say, but it's a bit misleading. It's a smaller bucket than people think. Because when you're at a certain restaurant and you're always saying, like, let's say you're saying a high-end restaurant and you say, always say yes. These guests are paying for it.
That particular client, yeah.
That particular client, of which it serves the restaurant and it serves the guest. That's a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
But if you're telling me, like, always say yes, and they go, instead of tomatoes, can I have extra shrimp? It's not something that you can say yes. So being on both sides, how would you advise people to handle it? Because more importantly than always saying yes, it's never saying no. Because a no really sticks with a person in the wrong way. They are a guest, so kid gloves are really needed there. Do you have any tips to really not say no?
I would imagine that you all probably handle it the same way, where you say, let me see what I can do for you.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can do. I'm not making any promises. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah. And so that's a very important way to handle it. And that's something that I had to learn, because a delayed no, so to speak, it's like, it's much better than, an immediate no. So
yeah,
even
you don't even have to make an effort. You could just delay the no. You just come back.
Yeah.
Come back a minute later and say, nah, sorry, couldn't help you. But
I did try.
I did try.
I went in the kitchen. Shot. I walked in. I knew what you were going to say.
He was in a bad mood.
He looked at me. I walked back out.
And that's really a full circle. I want to stay on this for a little bit, and I have one more question to ask you. I find that to be very, very challenging if you have a mean chef to even pretend to even go back there. You know the answer
you're gonna get.
I know the answer, so you have to really do the dog and pony show,
just like the shirt says.
Nope. And so I've really learned that instead of saying no, I try to come up with a solution that may not even be an option. So I say, as it turns out, we can do this for XYZ, Right. And so I'm not, nowhere in there am I saying no. Obviously, I can't, substitute shrimp for tomato. But I say, as it turns out, we have a side of shrimp that I can ring in. Would you like me to do that for you?
Right.
And so I turn that phrase, as it turns out, as offering a solution to them. And so it really puts them in a position for them to say no.
Yeah.
Right.
Either they're going to buy it or they're not.
Either they're going to buy it or they're not.
We have a phrase we use in the kitchen all the time. It's come to me with solutions, don't come to me with problems. So you just always keep a solution in mind, for sure. Like you can't have shrimp for tomatoes, but I can bring you half a pickle.
I mean, I get it, and I really want to protect the chef, because it's like art, right? I mean, you put your heart and soul into it, and you're putting out this thing. But then when a guest sits down and they want what they want, and they want to direct it, but you could never do that to an artist. They would never take the job. Even when you commission an artist, you still have to sit back and take what they have provided for you. And if you say, "Hell, I want red over here and blue over there," they're going to tell you to go fuck yourself.
Right.
Now,
I'm like the most difficult patron ever. I'm the most difficult customer ever because I'm the guy that does that. I'm like, oh no, this needs.
Are you?
Oh yeah, I'm the worst.
Oh, come on, man. How could you?
I know what it's like.
He always says
so
yes.
Like, give me a side. Just give me a side. Just bring out the side. I'll make it myself.
Oh my God. Okay, so when you go out with your wife, is she the same? Do you guys amp each other up, or is she the balance? Like, does she just take it as it comes, and you're sitting there trying to substitute everything?
I think that I'm cursed, to be honest with you. Like, no matter where we go, no matter how much money we spend, it's always a letdown. It's always terrible. Something always goes wrong. It's like I said it to her last weekend. I'm like, I think I'm cursed. It just doesn't matter. That was the melted cheese incident. Before that, I told you we went to the French restaurant. It's like the only master chef in Montana, right? We drive like 2 hours. We get there, and I asked the lady, I say, when we get to the hotel, because it's like a hotel/restaurant, I say, what's the best thing on the menu? She said, well, you should have the pork 2 ways. She said, it's incredible. And I said, oh, that sounds good. So what should I have for an appetizer? She said, oh, I would have the pork. I was like, that's triple pork. That's a little strange. And then she went on to tell me that it was the last day of service for the restaurant. They had sold the restaurant, and this was it. This is the last day. So this is last chance pork. 3 ways.
Last chance pork.
3 ways.
You are
so we
cursed.
tried to go to the best restaurant in the entire state, and I got last chance pork. Yeah, I'm cursed.
And for dessert, maple glazed crackling.
Yeah.
Crackling.
Exactly. Pork 4 ways. So, but she looked at me and said with a straight face, like, it's not you. Like, you're not cursed. It's just everywhere we go is terrible. Like, we're just lucky to have you to cook for us at home. Basically,
Man, you need a hug and a good restaurant.
Yeah, for sure.
So somebody in Montana, give this man a good restaurant.
Yes, please.
All right, I'm gonna let you go on this last one. Are you familiar with the Marvel movies, Avengers, and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Which Avenger would make the worst chef?
Incredible Hulk.
Oh yeah, he'd be the worst.
Yeah, he'd be the worst.
You can't tell him nothing.
Yeah, he'd just smash and stuff. Yeah, for sure. You know what?
He reminds me of a chef.
Yeah, he reminds me of a chef.
Yeah.
Chef Randy. He was the Incredible Hulk, for sure.
That's awesome. I love it, man. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Let us know about your chef stories. Write them in the comments on YouTube, or if you are listening to us on the audio podcast, let me know. I'm at The Modern Waiter on Instagram and The Modern Waiter Podcast on Gmail at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Dave Kenney, for joining us. Much appreciated for your time this morning / afternoon for us, morning for you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
I'm Marlon Joseph, The Modern Waiter.
I'm Danny Villains, subscribe, people.
We'll see you next time.
Later.
So glad you're